There you go.
Okay. Hey, so just in case anybody's wondering, I just started recording to the cloud. We are at the
Okay.
top
Oh,
of the
sorry.
hour. Okay. No, that's quite all right. This is a great
I-
conversation. Want to thank everybody. Today is the 18th of February, 2021, a Thursday. Every couple weeks, I'm on this morning session. It's about leadership. And before I kind of get started here, let's, well, somebody I talked to for just a couple minutes when we got started, he hasn't been here a while. Good to see Elmer. How you doing, Elmer?
Good, everyone. Nice to see everyone.
Janet and Gail and Glenn. Hey, Glenn, live long and prosper, right there, brother? I mean, well, let's get it
Still
up there.
alive. The gods must have.
Yep. The magnet is here. Richard, Giovanna, Ivier, Bill, Sharon is on board with us. She's driving, so she muted, and now you're not being able to see her, but she was on a little bit earlier for us. Linda, Sandra, Edward, Daisy is here. Cyril, how you doing? Robin's here. Carl, Jamie. Okay, so we got a quorum, so we got enough. So anyway, I'm changing gears a little bit today. Normally, I'm still going to do the kind of the PowerPoint thing, but you can take a breath because there's only 3 slides today, as opposed to usually about 8 or 10 or a dozen. But I wanted to talk about a couple different stories, things that I did, and then just as typical, open it up to the floor. So I am going to do the share screen thing. Let me pull that up. And let me get things started. Okay, I hope everybody can see that. So I'll tell about two stories, and it's called In Spite of Myself. This, in a way, is some of the things I say today, I think will sort of follow on with other things you've heard in the last few days or in the last week or so. How we get in front of each other, how we get in front of ourselves sometimes, and we can't see the forest through the trees. Name your your saying of the day. But the stories I wanted to talk about today are, well, in Glenn's words, damaging admissions. And in one particular, well, actually both particular stories, some really serious things could have happened to me, and they didn't, which is kind of why I'm talking about this topic today in leadership. Ivier had talked earlier this week about just how we kind of set ourselves and what our expectations are of how others treat us, and I it's not where I'm going exactly today with that, but I thought to myself, um, how I look on myself. I understand what it is, how we look on ourselves and how we present ourselves. That has a lot to do and with how we approach life and the things that we accomplish or don't accomplish. And I think that kind of morphed into this, and it just kind of popped in. I said, you know what? I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I think we've all been through. Not exactly what I'm going to talk about, what I did, but we've all had these events in our lives. I get another way we could put it. The only reason I'm not in prison is because I didn't get caught. I think we've all been down that road. What do they say? You talk to any attorney or anybody in the legal profession, maybe Adrian can say, they say everybody doesn't even realize that they commit 3 felonies a day. I mean, we could go down this road over and over and again. And I'm not trying to deal with the negative here, but I'm actually talking about the things that we sort of get away with. So this is where I'm going to go. So back in 1973, late 73, I got accepted to the Naval Academy. And in about January, February of 74, when I was approaching my graduation, I elected to not go. And my dad, needless to say, he was at the time, I want to say he was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He was the director of operations at his squadron, and he was not happy. I ended up going to Washington State University, spent a year there, and failed miserably. That's kind of what pushed me into making the decision with a best friend of mine to go into the Marine Corps and kind of get my act together, because I was going down the wrong side of the street very quickly. Then in boot camp, after having a year at college, my performance was stellar enough that I actually qualified for the Naval Academy Preparatory School. So I had a second chance to go to Naval Academy. And guess what I did? I didn't do it. So I decided, no, I want to do my 3 years in the Marine Corps, be enlisted, understand what's going on, and pay my dues and go that route. So I did. So I ended up going to infantry training school right out of boot camp. And after that was a couple months. And after that, in March of 76, I ended up in, of all places, Hawaii. Drinking age was 18. I was 19. Boy, the gloves were off. And did I have a hoot of a time as a young enlisted Marine? I was at Marine Barracks. It was guard duty. And we worked hard and we partied hard. That was the game plan of those days. I wasn't set off to Afghanistan or Iraq or or Vietnam or any of that stuff. Although I had my draft card 1-1A in '74. I wasn't required to go. By that time, they were drawing down, so I kind of skirted that. But I went in anyway. Of course, all my drill instructors and all those leaders that I looked to as I went through boot camp were all fresh out of Vietnam, and needless to say, they were pretty scary. And I was just a young kid growing up in high school, a school district, and fairly protected, and didn't, the usual stuff that we go through as young men as we grow up, and that was it. So this was a new experience. So fast forward, and I'm at Marine Barracks for a couple, I don't know, about 3 or 4 months by now, and I had just been promoted to Lance Corporal. That's an E3. And we'd all been having a good time. I won't name all the guys' names, but we were sitting around and somebody placed a bet on me. And that bet was when I was out on post 7. Post 7 is the kind of the lowest post of a compound on Barbers Point, and anybody who's been to Hawaii knows where Barbers is a naval air station. And there's a lot of modifications that have happened since 1976 through 78. But it's post 7 was out in this compound, and you can probably imagine in an exclusion area, there are different types of areas on bases, limited, controlled, and exclusion areas. And exclusion areas are those that are most protected. So you can just imagine what is inside those compounds. And post 7 is basically the cannon fodder post. You walk around with an M14 all hours of the night, day. You do your duty. You do your 4 hours, 4 on, 4 off, 5 on, running guard, you name it. All types of different types of guard because of the number of people that you might have in a platoon, et cetera, et cetera. So we all understand manpower and how the HR movement goes with people coming in and leaving, and you have more and less people to do certain things. So same thing applies here. So anyway, I'm walking post in the middle of the night after taking this bet, and the bet was that I would put Second Lieutenant Johnson, who was a brand new second lieutenant, the officer of the day, next time he came out to inspect the post, which every officer of the day has to do. I did that as an officer too. And I had to put him on his face. Literally say, you're not recognized. And that's exactly what happened. I saw the lights come out. I was out there walking my post with my M14, and Fauna Steele and Bond Miller are sitting there, in the exclusion area, in the control paneled area. It's a 2-man post, but it's a privileged post, and there are 2 people, so you can keep track on each other. And then it's a trusted post, and saw the lights turn off, and I saw a little 5'7" Johnny Johnson come out, and people, some of these guys in the Marine Corps, they're huge, a lot bigger than me, and they used to give him behind his back, of course, a ration about that stuff. And I took the bet. We'd all been drinking, and I said, I'm going to do it. And that's exactly what I did. He walked out. He was walking right for me. He saw me get on the ground in a prone position. He saw me put my rifle on my shoulder. He saw me point it right at him. And I said, halt. And I screamed it, and he halted. And I said, who goes there? This is the standard fare. And he said, Lieutenant Johnson. You could already tell in his voice that he was not very happy because I was pointing a weapon, a loaded weapon with a round in the chamber at him. And so he said, and I said, advance to be recognized, after he said Lieutenant Johnson, Lance Corporal Wriggle. So he advanced and he got about 30 yards away, and I said, halt. And I said, Lieutenant Johnson, famous words. Boy, this went through the barracks like wildfire. Lieutenant Johnson, not recognized. And I literally said, get on your face. And that's exactly what he did. He got down in the push-up position. He had the white barracks cap on. He was in his Charlie uniform, which is the khaki top and the green trousers. He was, nice and clean and dressed. And I got him in a push-up position out in the dirt of the compound. So he sat, and then I got up and I walked up to him, and I had my rifle at the port position, and I looked right at him. He looked right at me, and I said, Lieutenant Johnson recognized. And he stood up, and for about the next half hour, I had to recite all my general orders, my use of deadly force order, and we went through the leadership manual, and how many clicks are there on the bezel ring of a compass? 120, if you don't know, every 3 degrees. So I mean, we went through the whole litany, and he just kind of made me pay my dues for that, and he kind of had this smirk on his face, and I thought, yeah, I'm toast. And he left. Who I saluted, went to present arms, and he left, and he saluted, and that was that. Kind of a day or two went by. By that time, everybody in the barracks knew what Lance Corporal Wriggle had just done to Lieutenant Johnson, and I still had not heard anything. And then the infamous call came for me to go down to see Gunnery Sergeant Mulim, the company gunny. Best rank in the Marine Corps, as we all say, for those who have spent time in the Corps, the gunnery sergeant. And he called me into his office, and I was 12 inches and centered on his desk at the position of attention. And I think everybody in the barracks could have probably heard him giving me, the ration, and where the hell was I at? What did I think I was doing? And he wanted to know names, and I shut up and I said nothing. So he let me go, and that's the last I heard of it. I didn't go in front of office hours. I didn't have to go out and, wash and wax and vacuum guard vehicles and all that. It's just like, what the? So despite my own actions, and I've got a card here that I wrote down some things that probably could have happened to me. So everybody's probably, I don't know, maybe you haven't heard of a thing called the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ. And what I probably violated, as thinking about this, I put this together in my mindset now. Disrespect towards a superior commissioned officer, failure to obey regulation order, that's 92. Misbehavior of a sentinel or a lookout, provoking speeches or gestures, assault, I pointed a live weapon at him, reckless endangerment, a threat that was communicated. I mean, they probably could have thrown a number of other things at me. They could have thrown the book at me. I probably could have ended up in the either the local stockade or even Leavenworth. Who's to say? But nothing ever happened. Rank wasn't held for me. And I was a freaking hero for a couple weeks amongst my fellow peers. But every time I was out on inspection, Lieutenant Johnson stopped in front of me, did his turn. I saluted, and he gave me a few questions where he passed a number of other people, and that was me paying my dues. That was my first time, and I kept my nose clean all the way for the rest of the time. I was at Marine Barracks, and I went to Westlock, and I went to Pearl Harbor. I went back to Camp Pendleton in '78, March of '78, after a 2-year stint. And by the time July rolled around and I was going to get out in October, I did what some Marines do. We started getting this little short timers attitude. And I was a corporal at the time in E4, so I had the blood stripe, on my trousers. I was expected to take a more leadership role. It's your first leadership opportunity. And I was in headquarters and service squadron. I was a 81 millimeter mortarman. I was a mortar guy. I had a squad that I ran. with 3 tubes. And we went out and we spotted for aircraft. We did a bunch of things on Camp Pendleton. Anybody who's familiar in Southern California and Camp Pendleton with all those mountains and all that stuff around I spent a lot of just wonderful time humping around all them hills and doing lots of stuff out there at Camp Pendleton. So about 3 months to go, I was an NCOIC, a non-commissioned officer in charge. That means I ran a detail to go shoot on, to qualify on a shooting range with our M16s, on a known distance course, a KD course is what they call it, at the 200, the 300, and the 500. I've done it many, many, many times in my career, but this particular time, I had been waiting for my motorcycle to get Kirker headers put on it up in Los Angeles. And I had been waiting way too long, and I was getting bummed out that I was having to wait so long to get my bike back. And one morning, when I was supposed to be an NCOIC on the rifle range detail, I decided that I just wasn't going to go out. And I told one of the other guys to take the detail, another corporal that I knew, and I decided to go up to Los Angeles, and basically I was AWOL. I had a short timer's attitude, and this is the second time, and I was getting close, and this time a little more happened to me than the first time. This time I got kicked off the football team. I was a cornerback, not quarter, corner on defense. I had $400 withheld from my pay, and I was restricted to the barracks for a couple of weeks. After that, I was moved to the S4, the logistics section, over at the regiment, first Marine Regiment, at what we called Camp Horno, 51 area, 53 area of Camp Pendleton. And I ran all the guys who mowed all the lawns and took care of all the, all the greenery and all the trees and all the vegetation around the area. That was my penance, along with the money and getting kicked off the football team and restriction. They didn't take my rank, but I did get a page 11 entry, and I walked out of the Marine Corps on October 3rd, 1978, not unscathed, but things could have been a whole hell of a lot worse. And by the way, for anybody who is wondering, those are my 2 damaging admissions, by the way, Glenn. And that information is carried, whatever you do from day one that you go in the Marine Corps to the day you retire, everybody knows about it. So even as a young candidate going through officer candidate school, even going through as a second lieutenant, TBS basic school, and even through my whole career, that page 11 entry sat there in my OQR. It used to be a service record book as an SRB for enlisted people, and an OQR, officer qualification record, is what officers carry with them. And so that's what carried with me. And there were more than a few times that kind of in jest, but, kind of looking out the side of their eye, I had senior officers just kind of look at me, and, just the kind of comments that were made were, hopefully that is many, many years in the background. And, these kind of things, Captain Wriggle isn't thinking about this, or it sticks with you, and some people keep bringing it up. So just keep in mind that some things do follow you. Some things get forgotten about. And probably the things that you do worse, the more people remember about what you did. So in any case, that's why I chose this topic and these stories, and why I said in spite of myself, because they were definitely foibles, mistakes, and flaws. And in a very big way, I really walked out of that. I walked out of my enlisted tour in the Marine Corps relatively unscathed, when it could have been all over. And that comes from a guy who was on his way to the Naval Academy if he had wanted. So you want to talk about turn of events and things that can happen, and making decisions in one's life that can have a potentially adverse effect, in a blink of an eye. I'm not talking about driving a car and getting in a wreck, or driving a motorcycle, over 100 miles an hour, under the influence, or doing something, the stupid things that we can do when we're young. I'm talking about things that, that really could have long-term ramifications, or could hurt somebody. What if that weapon had gone off? What if I had actually shot Lieutenant Johnson right in the forehead where I was pointing? I just thought, and in the years that I spent as an officer, believe me, those things have gone through my mind, especially in combat operations. And I just think, wow, was that stupid or what? So in any case, to finalize this, I'm going to open up the floor. But if you want to come out here, if you have a position, if you've had multiple positions, if you have a place from where you wish to speak, here are some, maybe, what would you have thought of if you were one of my buds? What would you have thought of if you were actually a subordinate looking up at a corporal and going, good Lord, and that's a guy I follow, or looking at immediate supervisor thinking, we should slam dunk your hiney. I mean, just so you are. So I'm going to stop my share. Let me get out of that. Hold on. There we go. And I'm going to open up the floor for anybody who feels like stepping out. And so, hey, Glenn, I wonder if you do you have some damaging admissions quite like that? I don't know, but and there's a few other things that I've done, but I'll leave it. Those were a good start. And maybe as the months trudge on, I'll bring out some more things that old Mark Wriggle played with, and in the capacity of, quote, leadership. Sometimes that could have been questionable, and things that I've learned. And in this environment, through John's, this mindset environment, this has opened me up to rekindle and reassess some of the things that have happened in my past, and how to look forward, and how to address those and open those up and kind of move from those. Okay, thank you. Let's see. First person up, I got Richard, and then Jamie is up after Richard. Come on out, Richard.
Well, first of all, I know you and I've talked about military before, so thanks for your service. I also am a vet, and I suspect that you had a pretty good career prior to your first incident. Nothing bad in your service jacket. But if you had even done a slight indiscretion, we probably wouldn't be talking to you today. You wouldn't be sitting here with us, because you probably would have gone to captain's mast or faced some sort of severe legal challenge.
No doubt about it, Richard.
Which you wouldn't have gone to OCS, and you probably would have gotten a bad conduct discharge, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of times it's just, you could say, luck. Timing is everything, something like that. When I was in the, just to show how stupid young people can be, I was maybe 21, 22. I was stationed in Subic Bay in the Philippines in 1972, 73. And a friend and I were walking on the street in Subic. And for whatever reason, a local policeman stopped us. And I don't remember why, but he was giving us a tough time. And I remember it raining. And I reached over and I pulled his raincoat so I could get his badge number. And while I was doing that, I thought, are you stupid? He could have run both of us in, and who knows what would have happened in that case. But one could say I assaulted a police officer. But for the grace of God, nothing happened to me. So again, it's sometimes it's just dumb luck. And that's all I'd like to convey, that there's other people, all of us on here can say that we've done some things that we look back on and say, geez, I was lucky. So that's it. That's all I have.
Thanks, Richard. And I suppose what stands out for me too, just after having, having gone through a career, especially as an officer, multiple times. As a second lieutenant, I was an investigator and actually participated. Um, I had been selected to first lieutenant for a summary courts martial for a kid who caught stealing, Marine stealing bicycles from the barracks to, fund his other habits. Later on, I was a captain and junior officer and was part of an administrative discharge board, have been part of a special courts martial. So I've been in these capacities as an adjudication authority, and it's, and believe me, that kind of stuff went through my mind, thinking back to those days and really looking at, was this person malicious, or were they stupid, or they just didn't understand, or we go through those, we're going through those little tests in our head when we're looking at this. I had a warrant officer, CW04, who was 5 months from 20-year retirement, 5 months. And this guy, I won't say his name, he had 4 kids, married, and he was your typical, and I'll bet anybody who here who has dealt with the sauce at all in your lives, he was a Jekyll and Hyde. When I knew some of the senior officers that wrote fitness reports for him when he was at El Toro. I didn't know him personally, but I knew a number of the senior grade officers at El Toro that had, and when I would read the fitness reports that were written on him, they were stellar. I mean, this guy was a water walker, but when he got drinking, he was in the gutter. And sexual assault with not his wife, stealing shoes from Japanese locals' houses. I mean, this guy did some really crazy stuff when he was drinking. And guess what? And so I wasn't the senior officer, but the board sent him. He actually appealed because we were going to discharge him with a bad conduct discharge out of the Marine Corps with 5 months to go, with a family to feed, because of all the stuff that he'd done. And some of our reasoning, sorry, I'm getting a little long-winded here, but these are the kind of things that we go through. You've talked about some of the stuff you did, and I really take merit to some of the things you said, because these things are they're just brain twisting with some of the stuff that we must deal with in HR, that kind of stuff, and leadership. And I thought, what about all the people that keep their nose clean? What about all the people that could do these kind of things that don't, and they stick by the rules, and they do these things, and they do the right thing, despite they could look over their shoulder, and they could have a little break of integrity, and nobody would even know the better, kind of thing. And so these are the kind of things that we go through. These are the kind of weights that we put to these kind of things. So anyway, he did appeal. I don't know whatever happened to him after that, but he went on to have an appeal, and I don't know if they turned, if the Performance Evaluation Review Board, the PERB it's called, turned it over some years later. He probably got some high-powered prior military attorney to support him or something. And I suppose I would have done the same, being in that situation. But that guy definitely, and the evidence was overwhelming. It was just unbelievable. He didn't even hardly say a word on his behalf, because he knew what this, where he was at. Anyway, next up, hey, Jamie, I see your hand up, so come on out there, sir.
Hi, everybody. This is kind of, I would say that, it's the day in the life of a college student.
Yeah.
Somewhat like Richard's story here with law enforcement, and Bill might get a chuckle out of this, because I'm sure he's bumped up against the edge of this with when he's been out on patrol. But so I'm in my mom's station wagon. It's Christmas break. I've got there's 6 of us in the car, and we're heading down. I lived in Delaware, so we were heading down to probably an hour away or so to some bar we were going to go to. So of course we had a couple drinks before we left and decided we all had to go to the bathroom. So smart guy here decides to pull off on a back road, and rather than just pull over on the side of the road, I decided it's a good idea to take the station wagon in the middle of a field. Well, of course it gets stuck. Don't laugh too hard. It gets better. It's comical. So we all get out and go to the bathroom, and car gets stuck. So we got to call the tow truck. Of course, the tow truck guy calls the police. And of course, the police comes and he says, what's up? And, I don't know how you're going to do a sobriety check in the middle of a field, but he didn't. So he just took our names and numbers and, went off and, probably looked us all up, which he actually did. He let us go. We went our way. We went to where we're going. And as we're going home, we're going through the small town, and I notice off to the side, there's a police car kind of sitting off to the side next to a building. And of course, they had the description of the car. They knew, who was in it. And so as we get past this guy, he comes out and he follows me. He follows me for a while. Now, I'm not drunk. I'm sober. So I'm not weaving. I'm not doing anything stupid. So I know he's behind me. Don't know why. So we get to another little town. I decide to turn off the main road onto a side street, make a right turn, a left turn. And as soon as I make a left turn, there are 9 police cars everywhere, including him behind me, and surround us. Lights on, out of the car, guns pointed, just sat there, right? I'm pretty sure I later had to change my underwear. But so he walked up, the guy who was following us walked up and he said, okay, what's your name? And I told him my name. He says, okay, hand me your keys. And as I handed him my keys, I dropped them. And I just instinctively went to pick them up. And as I went to pick him up, he opened the door, grabbed me by my hair, and dragged me out of the car and laid me down, face down. Well, I'm sure he thought I was going for a gun. He didn't know who I was. So there's information about this story. So he pulls me down on the ground and frisks me. Then they ask for the name of some other guy in the car who's he's bad news. Turns out this guy had a warrant out for his arrest in the car. And all they get over the radio when they look people up is a warrant out for their arrest. It was at the time, it wasn't detailed. He could have been murder, it could have been sexual assault, it was a traffic ticket. But none of these policemen knew that. It was just a warrant for the arrest. So they find out the guy's in the back, they drag him out of the back. They put him in the police car. And this was all state police now. Well, one town police, and then the rest were state police. And you don't mess with state police over here in the States, usually typically. So they folded him in the back seat and took him out. Well, the moral of the story is, A, don't pull into a field and go to the bathroom, and don't get in a car with a guy who doesn't know what kind of arrest warrants he has out. I guess we should all probably review that before we get in the car. Certainly don't drink and drive. But I was probably. You've heard stories of, people getting shot for no reason, and that probably could have been a lesson. And I could possibly not be sitting here, I think, with you, Mark, and talking about pointing a gun in a superior's face and what could happen, the unknown that could happen there. The unknown that could happen. The guy pulled his gun. He had his gun out and dragged me out of the car. He could have slipped, could have shot me. You're goofing off. You're screwing around, you think it's innocent, and it just escalates, and you never know. And thankfully, nothing happened to me. I wasn't arrested. I'll wrap this up. We did go to we knew where the police barracks was. So dummy me goes to the police barracks, parks the car, and walks in and asked about him. And 3 cops walked toward me, and I can see the guy in the back room. He's handcuffed to a pole, which he deserved. And 3 cops came up to me and goes, listen, you need to get out of here. Okay. Okay. Have you been drinking? No, sir. Bye-bye. Out the door. And, of course, I didn't learn my lesson the first time I'm spread eagle on the floor in the middle of the winter. I got to go into a police barracks and, push it even further. Well, anyway, it's just, you just never know. You just never know what's going to happen from one point to the next. And I they're great stories because I think they're lessons learned. And I think you learned your lesson, and that's why you became a lieutenant colonel. after a couple of misfires. We've all misfired. I said in the chat, we're all 5 minutes away from getting arrested, whether we know it or not. And that's life, I think, for a lot of people, not everybody. And I just I love those stories because they're lessons to learn and move forward.
Great. Hey, thank you, Jamie. Yeah, it's a great story. Yeah, I'll bet there are other stories in this bunch that maybe someday somebody will feel inclined to come out and mention that. And in spite of oneself, right? In spite of oneself,
I would tell you that if
never
I'm going
know.
to tell you more stories, I'd have to get paid for them because they're pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, we'll have to have a story session. Oh, okay, thanks. Stefan, I see your hand up, and then I see Cyril after Stefan. So come on out there, Stefan. Am I saying that? Is it Stefan or Stefan?
Stefan's correct.
All right, Stefan.
This actually kind of made me chuckle a little bit because I've had a couple of pretty dumb encounters going. I'm actually gonna pull over, so I'm not driving.
Good move.
I had a couple of pretty dumb encounters with police when I was younger. One was my sister's encounter, but as a result of my actions. I used to like playing with toy guns as a kid.
Gail's nodding.
And like most young boys do. And I didn't like the fact that they were bright orange. So I had the genius idea of spray painting them black. So this is when they got water guns that were actually shaped and sized like a real 9mm Beretta. So I had a black 9mm Beretta spray painted black water gun. And we went to the stewards, and my sister realized I had it. She's like, "What the hell are you doing having the thing in the car?" I'm like, "I was going to my friend's house." So he said, so I stuck it in the glove box, to hide it so it wouldn't cause an issue. Well, I forgot that it was in, yes, she knows this. I forgot that it was in the glove box, and I left. And a couple nights later, my sister went out with her friend, and they got pulled over by a cop for whatever reason. And when they opened up the glove box to try and find the license or the registration, the gun fell out into the lap. And next thing you know, they have pistols in their face, screaming at them to drop the gun. And of course, my sister's friends, thank God, they had whatever luck was on their side that day because she picked up the gun. She's like, "It's not even real," and started shaking it at the cop. Needless to say, I never painted my guns anymore after that. Because I look back, I'm like, I could have gotten both of them killed just by doing something. I was like 12 at the time, but later on, what was the other thing? Having a brain fart. I will get back to you on that in just a second.
Yep.
Oh, we were driving, my friend and I, home from New Rochelle, New York one night. We were visiting his cousin. And my friend realized that he was having a car tailing him, and so he decided to pull into a driveway to hopefully deter the cop from pulling him over. Well, it worked. Problem was he pulled into the driveway of a retired cop who had recently been robbed. And shut off the car, opened the window, he lit a cigarette, and I'm just sitting there snoring away because I'm still passed out. Didn't even know what was going on. Next thing you know, I have a 9mm Glock shoved through the window in my face, and a guy screaming in a pair of sweatpants, no shirt, no shoes, in the middle of winter, and my friend sitting there with his cigarette quivering in his mouth, ashing onto his pants, and I'm just like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And the guy, luckily, he was rational, but he's like, "Show me your hands." And so we both put our hands up, and I'm like, "I can show you my license. I promise." We just pulled over. We didn't want to get pulled over. We're not robbing you, not doing anything. And so I start to reach for my license, and he starts freaking out. I'm like, "Look, I can show you my hands, or I can show you my license. I can't do both." And so needlessly, we got away with it, but it wasn't until afterwards that I ended up just like breaking out into like shakes. So I was like, "Holy crap, what just happened?" So yeah, don't play with guns. Bad idea.
Don't pull into retired cops' driveways. Yeah, that's right. A little situational awareness, I suppose, is that is to be had there. Well,
Not
thanks,
really a leadership
Stephen.
thing, but I thought it was funny. So
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't funny at the time, but yeah, now in retrospect, now we can look back, and because we're still here, we can giggle about it now, and
Exactly.
learned. It's a very valued lesson learned. So um, great, thank you, Stephen. Thanks for sharing. Hey, Cyril, you're up.
Hi, 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 Mark. This is fun. I have an interesting one. Uh, I well, I actually it's interesting because you'll find it out. It's not quite the way. It's not quite in terms of all my fault, but I had definitely had something to do with it. Let's see. In the early '90s, my friend convinced me to go over to Italy with him because he was doing shows over in Italy. Can you hear me all right? Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you.
He wanted me to kind of because he was my best mate, and he wanted me to hang out with him whilst he was doing his shows in the club, and so we went to this small town in on the Adriatic coast of Italy, round about the middle, called San Benedetto del Tronto, and he had hired an apartment, and we were happily living there. And because it was beautiful. We went over. It was winter, and it was glorious because instead of having to suffer the grey of London during winter, we had beautiful blue. It was chilly, but it was a beautiful blue sky almost every day. And so I would go out and do some shopping and bits and pieces in my the little Italian I had learnt by then, which wasn't much because it was quite early on. And it's a small little town, and me being me, I like to be polite and courteous, and one of the things I did was when I went was that I brought along this second-hand coat I had picked up. It was quite big at that time to buy clothing from some of the kind of Army and Navy type second-hand clothing stores, and I had picked up this really beautiful, heavy winter Air Force coat. It was like it nearly came down to my feet. It was so big. A navy. It was too big for me, really. So, but I loved it because it kept me beautifully warm in the coldest weather. And then I had taken it with me to Italy, and was enjoying having it. But so I had this coat on. And walking past the police station, and I give a hi and a nod to the policeman, and lo and behold, he pulls me in. Now I'm just being polite and being nice. I was me being me, and so he pulls me in, and lo and behold, they think I'm some terrorist, so they give me the 3rd degree. One of the guys quickly realizes that I'm not a hard nut, and I have no ill intent, although one of his mates really didn't seem to think that much from the way he was trying to interrogate me, and from what I can understand from his Italian, which wasn't much, but I could tell from his persona, his demeanor. And but this caused major problems because then what happened, even though I only went out for some shopping and I was just saying hi, so the policeman then wants to go over to our apartment to check out the apartment. Okay, so they check out the apartment, and my mate liked to have a bit of blow now and again. He just, later on, he used to take it for medicinal reasons because he got some. He always liked to have a bit of a smoke, and I occasionally would. It's not really wasn't never really one of my big things. But so he had he had left over a couple of small little. They were minuscule left over, and these guys found them. And so they pulled him in for that. So this is all my fault because I went and said hello to the policeman, and Now, and it gets worse because now my friend is a bit of a ladies' man, and he had a girlfriend who an Italian lady who was basically besotted with him. I mean, really. I mean, to the point of uh, going way farther than what would normally happen to most women, and she was obsessed with him, and because at that point he kind of was starting to, and we were moving around a lot, so we couldn't see all the time anyway, and she was getting the idea that he wasn't being as true as he might be to her, and to take it out on him, she, what the Italians call, denounced him. Okay, so this basically means that, so she basically said he's a bad boy and the police should look out for him. Now this guy, now my mate is a lovely guy. He'll help anybody. He's got a bit of a naughty streak, but he's a sweet guy and he'll help anybody. He'll also chat to anybody. I mean, it always used to get me, and it's one of the things I learned from him was that, he's such a lovely guy that, there's a guy on the street who's living on the street, and he'll go because he wants a cigarette, but he'll go up and he'll take a cigarette off him, but he'll have a really nice chat with him, and talks about all sorts of stuff, and it kind of really, that really made me think about how to appreciate people, because he was very, very outgoing. Anyway, so because they're denouncing, then what would happen is the police would then raid him every so often. Okay. So from this one little thing that I smiled at this policeman and said hi, now my mate is being regularly put upon. Now it turns out that the chief of police, I think, of this particular area had come to one of his shows, and now my friend had a couple of really amazing shows, and one of them was based on Michael Jackson's Thriller, which was basically, I'm not sure, you might be able to find it on the net because I know I've seen it there somewhere, but and basically it's him coming out of a coffin as a zombie, basically, and then doing these mime. It's a beautiful show. Everybody loves it, and they used to love to come back and see it over and over again. Not only because of the show was so good, but because to watch the audience reaction. Every time was amazing, because even though you'd seen the show, it's just such a laugh to see how everybody else reacted. So it turns out, though, because he used stage blood in his show, it turns out that when the police came and saw him, and they realized, most of them realized that he was just a nice guy. He was doing his shows and having a bit of fun. But the problem was now that the chief of police fainted in the sight of blood in amongst his colleagues, so he lost face. And if you know anything about Latin countries, loss of face is not good. So now he's getting, not only was he raided, but they also put him on Interpol. I mean, it's ridiculous. They put him on Interpol because it just went out of all proportion. It took him ages to try and sort anything out because somebody put him on a wanted list. I mean, it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's true. What a story! I mean, it was, and it was worse for him. I mean, it was all that happened to me was that basically they went and raided the hat, but they raided him so often. So he was at other places around Italy, and he'd still be being raided by other sets of police because of this denunciation and the fact that he'd been put on an Interpol list. I mean, it's absolutely, I mean, in fact, so much so that he kind of had to stop going to Italy for a while. I mean, he forgave me. He forgave me pretty quickly because he's a good, nice guy, and he realized it's me being me and being silly. So, but anyway, therein lies an interesting story. Now, and as I said, I was just being me. I hope you found that amusing, because I know I find it amusing in retrospect, especially. But it wasn't always amusing to him under the circumstances.
Thank you, Cyril. Yeah, the thing that came to mind for me, Cyril, was and in a somewhat parallel way with what I experienced and the people that are approached me years later, but with not really ill intent, but sort of, this thing of legacy of actions, how things that can happen in a certain direction or a certain way that have a certain codification, so to speak, whether good, bad, whatever it is, and how that affects others and how that can linger and how that can be carried and how that can be manifested by their actions against someone else too. So, I see, oh, Glenn, hey, well, the man, Glenn, you're here. I see the hand up. Come on out there, brother. What's up?
Hey, 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 hey. You know what? Let me go back and lower my hand. Interesting stories today, and yeah, that was quite a damaging admission on your part, Marine. Yes. You know,
Yes.
I cannot take credit for that. The very first person that I ever heard use that term, damaging admission, was your friend and mine, Mr. John Lavenia,
No
who taught me
kidding.
something about damaging admissions. Um, at that time, primarily from a marketing standpoint, and also, marketing, good marketing, because telling the truth is always a good idea. And telling the truth about ourselves, that we're not the superheroes that some of these online so-called heroes make themselves out to be. My thought about this has a bit more immediacy. As you probably know, we have been off the grid for several days now, and fortunately, we are back. We've got electricity back. The heat's been running non-stop since late last night, so the house is nice and toasty warm, which is great.
You got a file, man.
We've got a trickle of water, and fortunately, we were able to collect a good amount of potable water before the pipes froze up, and so we're okay on that score. But here's something that I realized coming through this, and we're in decent shape. Fortunately, we're in a position where we didn't have any way to cook hot food, so we went and got a gas grill and stuff like that. So we were able to kind of get ourselves through the situation. The realization for me is that coming through all of this, and hopefully now coming out the end as the weather is starting to warm up, I had a very damaging realization, personal realization, which was that I did not have us sufficiently prepared for a situation like this. We were okay. We had some of the things we needed in advance. We did not have everything. I'll give you a perfect example. Paula and I had been talking about this for some time before any kind of weather events or disasters. I realized I should have pounded the table and insist, honey, we are going out today and we are going to buy a good gasoline generator to support the house and keep things charged and keep things warm and moving. So the realization for me is, and I hope for all of us, that we can learn this lesson the easy way. Please have a conversation with the lady in the mirror. Please have this conversation today, this evening, and ask the person in the mirror, are you prepared? Am I ready for a hurricane, a tornado, a complete blackout, a complete loss of water? Am I ready for a natural disaster? Am I ready for the zombie apocalypse, if you know what I mean? Are you prepared? Am I prepared for what may happen in terms of things that are out of my control? I can control my own actions, my own responses. I can control my own level of preparedness. is my level of preparedness where it needs to be? And when you answer back to the person in the mirror, please tell the truth. Please tell yourself the truth. And if you're not prepared, go get prepared. If you need to buy extra foodstuffs, if you need to buy extra canned goods, if you need to go get yourself a gas generator, if you need to get this, that, and the other, whatever you need, and I'm confident that you, Mark, and guys like John and Richard and Ace and these dudes who are experienced at being prepared for what may come. I know that there's been one session. And so the damaging admission for me is that this happened and I wasn't ready. Bottom line, I had some stuff. Bottom line, I wasn't ready. We weren't ready. So I'll guarantee you this. Next natural disaster, IAS is going to be ready. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm just sharing with my friends here. Have the conversation this evening, today, and go do what you got to do to be ready. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Glenn. And again, I think actually kind of finalizing here before I hand off to John real quick. The things that came to mind, I wrote some words down: purposeful, intentful, thoughtful, stable, methodical. I mean, these things, in spite of oneself, in spite of myself, take that and take the actions. That's the whole point of these environments, of this JLSM environment. It's being able to move forward and taking action, being purposeful, and kind of knowing where you're going, what you're doing. Hey, look, as we all know, what is it? Planning is only good to the point of execution. So we don't necessarily know what's going to happen tomorrow, but that's the whole point of planning and being prepared. Actually, by doing that, being in a position to be a little closer to being able to handle whatever is coming at you than not. And with that, Mr. Lavenia, if you'd like to take the floor, sir, it's all yours.
Well, thank you for the pre-warning. I was prepared. Unlike Glenn, I was prepared to speak. Interestingly, Stuart and I, as he was wrapping up the Adventures in Mindset broadcast that he would do, he's on hiatus now, but the last couple of broadcasts we did with that was about preparedness. And so anyone who's interested in that sort of topic, which I think could be everyone, you can go back and watch the replays on that. I will say that that here in Phoenix, we kind of dodged that whole, like everybody, San Antonio was getting, snow and ice and everything. We were 66 degrees and sunny, so that's nice. I'll be crying about it in summertime, of course, when it's 120. But two words came up for me today, Mark. So I guess the title of this is "In Spite of Myself," which I think is beautiful. One is communication, right? So all the examples we heard about here had to do with communication or miscommunication, incorrect estimation of correct communication, incorrect estimation of effort, right? As it relates to, like Glenn was talking about, right? How prepared are we? Incorrect estimation, right? And when we look at all of our failures in life, or those things that we could consider damaging and that we are now admitting, because that's endearing to people too, right? And from a marketing perspective, oh, you're not perfect. Oh, well, let's talk some more, right? So you're accessible. We make ourselves more accessible through those being real. Some people would call it being vulnerable. I say it's being strong. It's like, look, I have blundered. So what does that make me? Just like you, I guess, right? So the other word that came up for me was injustice, especially when Cyril was talking. And I was thinking as he was talking, well, what recourse does this person have? I know here in the United States, whether most people don't know it or not, but we do have a constitution and we do have, certain rights. Okay. So I'm thinking, here's this person whose rights are being violated. And again, it was because of a miscommunication and an incorrect estimation of effort on the part of the law enforcement, right? Who clearly didn't have the protection of this individual's rights as their purpose, which I think is another topic altogether. But the idea that we can cause great success or peril through communication, and And I think a lot of times it has to do with me just underestimating or overestimating what's needed to have the effect that I'm looking to have. This is a fascinating topic. We got to hear about ladies, men from Italy's. We got to hear about pointing M14s at superior officers. What a ride we just went on. My goodness. It's like I want to do another hour. Unfortunately, I got another meeting I got to run to. But thank you, Mark, and thank you, everyone. Fascinating session today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. Yeah. And thank you, everybody. I know we're at the top of the hour, so we've burned through the hour in total. I'm going to stop the recording, and unless anybody